Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Trapasso here. Episode 2, but the week 4 edition of All 32, this show in which I go through the entire NFL, all 32 teams, give you thoughts, opinions, advanced stat nuggets for all 32 teams, just my takes from watching the film, scouring the analytics, and all the advanced stats out there. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to go too long with the introduction. I'm going to jump right in. Last week, the pilot show, which was after week 3, I started with the AFC, so today I'm going to start with the NFC. Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons return. So I posted a video about this right after the game on Monday morning because I figured that was the most headline game of the weekend. Micah Parsons going back to Jerry World to face the Cowboys. Now, what a weird game. I mean, 40-40 tie. The ending of that game was bananas. It was great quarterback play from Jordan Love and Dak Prescott. I think that Packers should feel pretty fortunate that ball into the end zone with like 1 second left hit Jack Sanborn in the back and went straight down. If it didn't, the Cowboys win that game, and we are talking about clock mismanagement, all of that from Mike LaFleur, or from Matt LaFleur, and Jordan Love. Beyond that, though, I want to talk about Micah Parsons because I posted a video, and a lot of people in the comments, and I get it, don't read the comments, but I like to just monitor them. Oh, Micah Parsons was terrible. His defense allowed 40 points. He's hasn't lived up to the hype, all of that stuff. Micah Parsons was sensational in this game. He did only have the 1 sack late in the game, but depending on which analytics site you look at or, play-by-play tracking website, either 8, 9, or 10 pressures. So he was ridiculously productive. The inside move was there the entire game. He generated a lot of problems for that Dallas Cowboys front. A pretty good offensive line, honestly. I mean, with Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton is getting a little stronger, playing decent football. They have, Terrence Steele on the right side. Micah Parsons, it didn't matter where he was aligned. He had a fantastic game. So I just want to put that out there and start with that. That Micah Parsons, even though the Packers defense came in with just soaring and just all this ferocity, and it looked like, hey, this is the team. This is the Super Bowl contender that has the best defense through the first 3 games. Certainly was not the case overall collectively, but Micah Parsons himself, I don't want to say wrecked the game because that insinuates that, the opposition wasn't able to move the football, and the Cowboys certainly did in this game. But I think it took some tremendous quarterback play from Dak Prescott for Micah Parsons not to wreck that game. So in his return, kind of a weird feeling for the Cowboys fans and for Jerry Jones probably and Packers fans to tie in that football game. But Micah Parsons himself, let the record show that I'm saying I thought he was absolutely sensational in that game. All right, next team. Let's go with the New York Giants. A lot was to be made about the obvious, the start of Jackson Dart, his first NFL start. It was about time, right? And I said it on last week's show, like they need to make this move. It was clear that Russell Wilson was making like rookie level mistakes in his 14th year in the NFL. He beats the LA Chargers, a team that came in 3-0. Justin Herbert was leading the NFL in passing. The defense looked sensational. They win that game 21-18. It was kind of a strange game for both teams, for the Giants to lose Malik Neighbors for the season with the torn ACL. And it was just like him pushing off that infamous MetLife turf to leap up for a Jackson Dart long ball. And then Joe Alt going down in that game, and I'll get to him later. So it was strange from that perspective because that almost overshadowed what happened in this game. Those 2 key players going down. And fortunately for the Chargers, Joe Alt was not lost for the season. But then after it was, oh man, Jackson Dart looked great. He had 0 turnover-worthy plays. That's great. 0 big-time throws. He did not throw for a ton of yards. So, yes, he can always say that he won his first start. And I do not blame Giants fans for being, like, excited. Like, it's a rookie. He was picked in the first round. He's just better than the Daniel Jones when he was there. And that obviously Russell Wilson and any of the other quarterbacks that they've rolled out there during the Brian Daboll era. I get that there's certainly more upside, but let's wait to see him in a more high volume situation. But again, hats off to him and to Brian Daboll, that whole organization, to get that win. They needed to get into the win column this season. It's been pretty bad over the last 2 seasons after making that playoff run in 2022 with Brian Daboll. So no turnover-worthy plays, no big-time throws from Jackson Dart in this game, which actually I'm mostly fine with, because I think when you have someone that, I don't want to say Brian Daboll is a quarterback guru or genius. I mean, he's been with Josh Allen, he was, looked like the best offensive coordinator in the league, but otherwise his offenses have actually not been very good. And we're dating way back, into the early 2010s, 2008, 2009 with the Chiefs and the Browns, stuff like that. But I think it's good when you have an offensive-minded coach, a quarterback-friendly coach, let's say, and in that first game, in that first start for a rookie, he's not looking completely like deer in headlights, and he's not. And I just noticed that my ring light went out, but I guess we're going to have to use this light here anyway. Did not look like deer in headlights. Did not make a ton of mistakes, and did not try to do too much. And now my light decided to go back on. All right, this is just, we're totally live here on All 32. So I think that was good from Jackson Dart's perspective, that he didn't overdo anything and he didn't look completely out of sorts. But let's pump the brakes before saying, oh, he's arrived and he's the one. We got to see him play at a little bit more of a high volume level and just have more on his plate. And maybe Brian Daboll is not going to put that much on his plate and ask him to just take the easy throws, run when he needs to, and just keep this team relatively on schedule on the offensive side. Because the defense, as we saw against Justin Herbert, who came in super hot, can actually be pretty good, especially when Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, and company, Brian Burns, are really getting after the quarterback like they did in this game. Washington Commanders, they have cornerback problems. It's obvious that we're all looking at, is Jaden Daniels healthy? Were they just being precautious with the leg injury? Marcus Mariota's actually played pretty well, but man, they had problems this past week in the secondary. And I think overall, like last year, Mike Sainristil, who was a rookie last season, played fantastically. Like we thought he was going to be a slot corner, plays on the outside, has the interception, 2 interceptions in that divisional round win in Detroit, like just played out of his mind. I think he actually overachieved as a rookie. But beyond that, the outside, the rest of the cornerback group, the other outside corner position, has not been very good thus far. I think up front, they're okay. They could probably use more of a pass rush on a routine basis. But right now, the Commanders are allowing an opposing quarterback rating of 104.5, which is the 5th highest in the NFL. So I know quarterback rating is not perfect, and that is at this stage of the game that we've all seen the numbers game explode in the NFL, just what we understand. That is a relatively elementary stat, but I do think it gives a pretty good perspective on the back seven, and what's gone on in terms of the coverage has just not been very good. And you think about the pieces that they have in that secondary, it's just, there's Mike Sainristil and not much else. So I think up front, Dorrance Armstrong, Javon Kinlaw, they obviously don't have Jonathan Allen anymore. He's in Minnesota. You like to see some of the younger pieces take those steps forward. Johnny Newton, the second rounder from a year ago, guys like that. Ultimately, I mean, I think Daron Payne, from what I've watched on film, has played good football, but maybe the pass rush can help the secondary, because right now the secondary, I think, is a clear weak spot for what is otherwise a pretty darn good Washington Commanders team, and is, of course, completely different when you have Jaden Daniels on the football field. But I'd like to see Trey Amos play a little bit better. The 3rd-round pick out of Ole Miss looked good in the preseason, good in week 1. Since then, not so much. So I think cornerback and just the secondary as a whole, a little bit, and maybe a lot of a concern for the Commanders right now. Last team in the NFC East here on All 32, Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, so I posted a TikTok this week, and I was just trying to get across that the Eagles are 4-0, but Jalen Hurts is holding this team back. And I don't know if that makes sense, because the ultimate goal is to win games, and this is the reigning Super Bowl MVP. These are the reigning Super Bowl champion Eagles, and they're just continuing to win. They've just won so many games over the last, year plus 4 games in this season. But I just thought it was a perfect time to pinpoint some of his weaknesses. He does not have a strong arm. Last season, during the regular season, Jalen Hurts had 14 turnover-worthy plays to just 12 big-time throws. Those numbers are very low. Like 12 big-time throws across an entire 17-game season is incredibly low for a quarterback that is a full-time starter, that is especially starting and, the quarterback for the number one seed in a respective conference. And now teams, I don't want to say they're starting to understand what the Eagles want to do every week schematically, but he has 3 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays through 4 games. The Eagles had 0 passing yards in the second half. And if it's not a swing pass or just a play-action deep shot, this offense looks very stagnant. Now, you have Saquon Barkley. They're not running the football quite as well as they did last year. Obviously, that was an historic offensive line, historic season from Saquon Barkley. But I just think Jalen Hurts, there's a little bit of an overrated element to his game that we see all the wins. Of course, the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP cannot be overstated how important those were to that organization, obviously, and to his legacy. But I think at times he's a little bit more of a product of his environment than people like to lead on. I wanted to put that out there. That's my thought. If you disagree, that's fine. But those are the reasons why I think this offense is struggling. A.J. Brown is a little bit miffed at his lack of targets, his lack of production, and the fact that they had 0 passing yards in the second half and ultimately still won that game. I just think eventually when you're having that much inefficiency on the offensive side, it's going to eventually catch up to you. And we'll see. Maybe the Eagles with their defense, with their run game, can not have it catch up to them until later in the season, or who knows. But don't be surprised if it does catch up with them a little bit, because Jalen Hurts just plays better football. But right now in the first month, and even I thought so throughout last season, Jalen Hurts a little bit overrated. Ironically, his 2 best games in the NFL are both of his Super Bowls. The first one against the Eagles that they lost by 3, or against the Chiefs, 2 years ago. And then, of course, the thrashing of the Chiefs. He was sensational as a thrower. The arm strength limitations did not really matter. He was hyper accurate. He wasn't afraid to stretch the ball down the football field. But in general, I think there is a little bit of an overrated element to Jalen Hurts. All right, this is All 22. I'm Chris Trapasso. This is the weekly show that I run through all 32 teams and give you 1, maybe 2 takes, thoughts, advanced stats that I have found on film, observations, things like that. Just finished the NFC East. Let's jump over to the NFC North. Rashawn Gary, Green Bay Packers. Where's he been? I just talked about Micah Parsons, his return, which I guess that was kind of Dallas Cowboys related. But I also want to talk about Rashawn Gary only generating a pressure on 10.5% of his pass rush snaps through 4 games. And I thought he was going to be the biggest beneficiary to the Micah Parsons acquisition, that he would come in and he would just see so many one-on-ones, and someone who earlier in his career pre-injuries was, to me, I would always call him a sneaky elite rusher, because he wasn't getting all the accolades, but he was generating a pressure on 16, 17, 18% of his pass rush snaps. The first 3 games, he was fine. 5 pressures, and 4 pressures. Those are good numbers. That's what you want to see, but not quite the efficiency. And then last week against the Cowboys, completely blanked. And I'll actually flip that, because I'm realizing I talked about Parsons before when I should have talked about the Cowboys. I'll flip this and jump back up to the NFC East for a second. The Cowboys offensive line, Terrence Steele, Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton, they have some other pieces on the inside. Cooper Beebe's dealing with an injury. It's a really good front. It's one of the better blocking units in the NFL. And to not have CeeDee Lamb and to face that pass rushing group, at least on paper, in the Green Bay Packers, and Dak and Javonte Williams to combine, and obviously George Pickens, Kevontae Turpin to score 40 points, very impressive. So I think the low key, I don't want to say elite yet, but getting close to being elite level offensive line, I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. All right, now jumping back to the NFC North, because I realized I talked about the Packers when I mentioned the Cowboys, and that was more about Rashawn Gary. And I just threw in what I should have talked about at the beginning of the show with the Dallas Cowboys. Going back to the NFC North, Minnesota Vikings, they're in a little bit of a tailspin. I think we thought early on, okay, J.J. McCarthy in that first game against the Chicago Bears looked like a rookie, but then in the fourth quarter turned it on. The defense has been great, and it still has been very good. Brian Flores absolutely should be getting another head coaching job at some point. And I know that legal issue with the NFL suing the league is looming over his head, and maybe other owners don't want to hire him because of that. I don't know. That's way beyond what I know, what goes on behind closed doors in owners' suites in the NFL. But in general, the Vikings, I think, are still one of the better defenses in football. I would like to see a little bit more, especially in the run game, from Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Those were the two big signings in the middle to kind of complement the pieces on the outside that they brought in last year in Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. You have Dallas Turner, who's now the second-year edge rusher. He's flashed a little bit, and I think he's only going to get better as he gets stronger and gets more time on the field. But Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave have not been very good against the run. We've seen teams run the football better than normal against the Vikings these first couple games. Kenny Gainwell, I'm going to talk about him later. He rushed the football very well last week in Dublin in that win over the Vikings. There was like a backup who's like a scat back and almost had 100 yards on the ground. So Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, a little bit older players, especially Jonathan Allen. And the pass rush has mostly been pretty good between those two to have almost 20 pressures combined. I want to see them get off blocks a little bit more frequently, make more plays against the run. I think that will just it would have a ripple effect for this Vikings defense to get teams into second and longs and third and longs, where then Brian Flores can deploy all of his exotic blitzes and really allow his secondary to tee off and pounce on the football, break on those in breakers, and pounce on those hurried throws from the opposing quarterbacks. All right, Detroit Lions, staying in the NFC North. I got to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. When you are at a bar or you're just out with your friends or you're talking at a family party and someone brings up who are the best receivers in the NFL, you're going to get Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, and these guys I think are all awesome. Maybe, last year before he got injured, Nico Collins was up there. A few years ago, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams a few years ago. Okay, sure. Amon-Ra St. Brown probably never comes up. He absolutely is elite. And whether you want to say, oh, well, he's just a slot receiver. Is he like the best slot receiver in the NFL? Number one, we have all realized for like 15 years now, a slot receiver is a starter, and every team deploys 3 wide receivers plus every week. So just because he's in the slot, I don't care. Like, he's still producing at a ridiculously efficient rate. Right now, Amon-Ra St. Brown's career yards per route run average is 2.30. That is insane. For his career, 2.30 yards per attempt average. For perspective on that, usually by the end of the season, the best receiver in the NFL in terms of yards per route run is like in the upper twos. Last year, Puka Nacua was like insanely, like he was like 3.8 or like 3.2 or 3.3. But if you're for a career over that magical 2.0 threshold for yards per route run, you're doing something right. You had a fine season relative to how often you were allowed to run routes in the NFL. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is right around 2.4 right now for this season. He's got a ton of touchdowns. He had 2 last week. But for his career, 2.30. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, when I hear any conversations of the elite receivers in the NFL, Amon-Ra St. Brown, for me, will always be included in those. And then lastly, in the NFC North, here on All 32, where I go through all 32 teams, give you a take or two, Chicago Bears. I think DJ Moore needs to be included more in this offense. Now, a month ago, you would have thought there's no way that I'm going to bring this up because DJ Moore is the number 1 receiver in Chicago, right? I've talked about at length that I think last year, Caleb Williams' rookie season was incorrectly dubbed as like a failure or a huge disappointment. I didn't see that. I mean, he took too many sacks, but I thought, 20-6 touchdown to turnover to interception ratio, higher big time throw rate than turnover worthy play rate. You always hope to see that from a rookie. It's way above that 1-to-1 ratio right now in terms of big time throw rate to turnover worthy play rate. And he's doing it mostly by throwing to his secondary targets, to Rome Odunze and Olamide Zaccheaus and Luther Burden, who I loved during the pre-draft process. DJ Moore has 20 targets through 4 games. 20. Like, there were times last season, and we've seen that he can shoulder 20 targets across 2 games. Now, you could say, hey, look, like he's drawing number 1 corners. He's helping out Rome Odunze, Zaccheaus, Luther Burden, the dump down game, the screen game, because he's drawing so much attention. But DJ Moore is like, he was a first-round pick in 2018. He was super young then. He's still in the prime of his career. He's proven that he can deal with number one corners and still produce. So I'm not going to be one to tell necessarily Ben Johnson how to run his offense. But to me, what seems the most glaring piece that's missing from this Bears offense, it's actually been pretty respectable through 4 games, especially having a young quarterback still at the helm, very talented one in Caleb Williams. You got to get DJ Moore included more in the offense, even if that is getting him RPO slants and screens and drag routes, getting him the football in space on those high percentage throws, because he has proven that he is a 3-level winner. And I always bring this up, he is one of the best yards after the catch wide receivers in the NFL. So DJ Moore, to me, needs to see the football more frequently than 5 times a game, which is what he's averaging entering week 5. All right, all 32 entering NFC South territory, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And very quickly, again, this is the show in which I run through a take or two, an advanced stat nugget, observation, an opinion for all 32 teams on a weekly basis. Thank you for watching. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, NFC South. I'm going to zero in on 2 things here. Baker Mayfield had the best throw that I saw in week 4 on film. I can't say I watched every single throw, but I had a way of filtering it. The 77-yarder to Emeka Egbuka, where it was like a designed rollout, play action rollout to his right. It was a great isolation block from a tight end that held a defensive end at bay. And it was a triangle read. It was like a play that you'll see on Friday night at your local high school. But Emeka Egbuka took his deep route in the triangle upfield because there was space. And Reed Blankenship does not look anywhere close to the play. But it showed on that play when I watched it from all 22 how quickly throwing lanes close in the NFL, because Reed Blankenship almost intercepted the pass. Baker on the run had to throw it with perfect trajectory, perfect timing, and of course, perfect placement. And he did that. So Baker Mayfield, hats off to the best throw that I saw in week 4. And I think he's playing borderline elite level play. Like, he's giving the Buccaneers borderline elite level quarterback play through 4 weeks. I also want to focus on very quickly the young corners in Tampa. Jacob Parrish, the slot corner from Kansas State, has played really good football. Looks like that classic, feisty, super twitchy, good tackling slot corner. Ben Morrison, who I had a first-round grade on, and, there were injury concerns about his hip in high school. Then he had his hip again at Notre Dame. I thought he was the best pure, more than Travis Hunter, the best pure man-to-man corner in terms of his traits of anyone in the class. He's played great football. And Zion McCollum, who's been around for a few years, uber athlete. Go check his relative athletic score. I believe it was perfect, or 9.99 coming out of Sam Houston State just a few years ago. Those 3, they're really good. Now, it's early, and there will be some hiccups most likely for Parrish. And in week 1, on a limited sample size, Ben Morrison didn't play great, but they're starting to play better football, getting more comfortable. And you have the wily veteran, who's not even that old, Antoine Winfield back there. So to me, it's like the Buccaneers, they've lost some pieces. There's no Shaq Barrett there in his prime. Vita Vea is getting up there in age-ish. The back 7, even with Levante David still playing there and is in the twilight of his career, the secondary, I think, is very young and very deep in Tampa, and that's helped them get off to this really good start. Carolina Panthers, I'm very concerned about Bryce Young. And I think we're going to look back on the drubbing of the Atlanta Falcons and see that as a major aberration. I mean, last week I talked about the footwork from Michael Penix in that game was so bad, and it was more about the Falcons playing poor football than Carolina's defense just playing amazingly. And looking up and down this roster, watching the film, outside of Ted McMillan, I haven't seen here's a young bright spot, or here's even a journeyman that's just playing better football here in Carolina than he was at his previous stops in the NFL. I think Princely Uman-Malayan has played decently around the corner, but he doesn't look, and it's early. And I'm not saying that this is the end-all be-all of his career and that it's an open and shut case, but he hasn't looked like all-pro level or defensive rookie of the year type player where you get really excited about it as a rebuilding team in Carolina. And Bryce Young has not played to the level that he did, frankly, in the second half last season when he got a lot of people excited post getting benched for Andy Dalton. It has almost been a regression back to toward the end of his rookie season. Now, I was just talking about the Atlanta Falcons, and that's the next team I'm going to mention here. I was talking about Michael Penix's footwork. Night and day from week 3 to week 4, like drastically better. That in week 3, I don't know if he thought, hey, we're playing the Panthers, we're just going to roll them. The footwork was atrocious. He was stepping, I mean, obviously he's a lefty, stepping with that front foot, completely having it wide open, throwing to the left, just not even stepping forward, only using his really strong arm. You can't do that in the NFL. You can do it in the Pac-12. You can do it in the Big Ten, whatever he was ultimately in that final season at Washington. Oh, yeah, it was the last year of the Pac-12. You can't do that in the NFL. So much better, fundamentally sound, front foot pointing directly at his target almost on every throw. And I don't think it comes as any surprise that he throws for 313 yards on 26 attempts. So a really high yards per attempt average this past week in the victory over the Washington Commanders. A lot of velocity, spreading the football around. Kyle Pitts was getting involved, and I was hinting that I think that breakout is coming. Drake London, obviously, with the touchdown. It needs to be something that Michael Penix focuses on because the talent is there. If we're only talking about his arm, one of the strongest arms in the league, his lower half has to help him generate not only that extra velocity to get the ball and fit it through tight windows, but the accuracy. And that is huge with him. And at times at Washington, the ball would sail where he was just completely open and just throwing the football, which I know that you do want to, and I'm thinking of this from a golf perspective. You want to get your hips open so that helps you drive the energy from your foot all the way up your hip to your arm, but you cannot be wide open and throwing it to the left hash or outside the left numbers if you're a lefty with like all arm. So night and day, I called for it in week 3 that Michael Penix's footwork needed to get better, and it definitely was in week 4. Last team in the NFC South, New Orleans Saints. I got to talk about Kendre Miller. He has been, now it's very minimal sample size, a very small sample. He has been one of the most elusive running backs in the NFL through 4 weeks. He's not getting a ton of carries, but we saw against what is not a very good Bills run defense in the first month of the season, him really do whatever he wanted against the Bills on most of his carries in that game where the Saints really hung in there in Orchard Park for 3.5 quarters against the Buffalo Bills. Alvin Kamara did not have a monster day, but Kendre Miller, what he can do with his contact balance mostly and his elusiveness as a big, like 6 foot, 225 pound back, I think he's like the most underrated young running back in the NFL. And Kellen Moore needs to utilize him more in this offense. He went into this game in Buffalo on Sunday, missed tackle force rate on 17 carries, which is very small, of almost 42%, which that's astronomically high. I mean, the small sample size needs to be accounted for there. But you think, okay, he's going to have more carries in this game maybe, and it's going to drop significantly. He actually increased his missed tackle force rate to almost 43% in this game. So Kendre Miller, 30-year pro out of TCU. He was so fun with those Horned Frogs there at TCU. 3rd rounder, 2023 draft. Big body, sneaky elusive. He's not like LaShawn McCoy. He's not David Montgomery. He's not Saquon Barkley with his lateral cutting skill, but it's just good enough, and he has so much power that he actually can break a lot of tackles. So I want to see Kendre Miller get more touches in this Saints offense. NFC West, Seattle Seahawks. I think Devon Witherspoon, this is probably not that hot of a take, but I just want to highlight this. He's the best blitzing cornerback in the NFL. You have, I'm trying to think of other players like Mike Hilton over the last couple of years has been super good in that area. Trent McDuffie under Steve Spagnuolo's watchful eye has been such a good blitzing cornerback. Devon Witherspoon, what he did on Thursday Night Football against Kyler Murray and that Cardinals offensive front was just amazing from a slot corner. He plays, he's like 5'10", 185. He plays like he thinks he's 6'2", 225, like he's Cam Chancellor out there. He had 2 pressures in that game. The tackling, he'll have a highlight reel tackle, then he'll miss a tackle or two. But he's just that ultra feisty blitzing slot corner who pretty good in coverage. He's not going to lock down. He's not like the best in terms of sticking with receivers on a routine basis, but he almost is like an extra linebacker out there who has the quickness to be a asset in coverage. So in terms of blitzing, keep an eye on that with Mike McDonald. Comes over from Baltimore, one of the blitz happiest defenses when he was there in Baltimore, and certainly when he was at Michigan under Jim Harbaugh. Devon Witherspoon, I think, could end up, with 30, 40 pressures as a blitzing cornerback this season. Los Angeles Rams, moving through the NFC West. I will go with the Rams, and I will talk about Matthew Stafford. I think he is playing, and I guess not all of them can be elite. I think Baker Mayfield's playing elite-level football. Dak, Josh Allen, last week or so, Patrick Mahomes. But Matthew Stafford is playing elite-level football, too. 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, in what was kind of a challenging win over an upstart Colts team this past weekend. Now, obviously, the Tutu Atwell touchdown, a cornerback falls down, and that was like an 80-yard score that was huge late in that game. But some of the throws that Stafford was making and the pocket navigation that he was showing looked like prime Matthew Stafford. Like, his arm strength has not subsided one bit. His pocket navigation and his confidence seem to be there too. So Matthew Stafford, hats off to, now into his late 30s where, I'm probably not going to draft him in fantasy. He's in the twilight. He's going to take a step back. He has not looked like he's taken a step back whatsoever. I believe his big time throw rate is like 8% right now, which is astronomically high. That's usually like where Josh Allen has been over the last couple of years, or the best quarterbacks in the league at the end of the season. So of course, just the first month, but to start at 38, 39 years old with an 8% big time throw rate in the first month of the season, very good start. Tremendous start for Matthew Stafford. And the last team on the NFC side of all 32 in week 4, Kyler Murray. I thought in that same game that I was just referencing earlier, Thursday Night Football, Cardinals, Seahawks, he did not see the football, like the field well. He did not throw the football very well because I don't think he saw the field very well. That interception on the dig route to Marvin Harrison Jr. or toward Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, you can watch that film and say, hey, why did he stop his route? Like, that's not on Kyler. But the throw looked like it was going to be high and wide anyway. There was a lot of times where he had open receivers, scrambled outside of the pocket. And I get it. That's part of the NFL today. These are not just these robotic pocket passers that see every single open receiver. They like to extend the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, even Dak, Lamar, all them. Kyler does that too. But then when he was getting outside the pocket, it was like he was a split second late, and then his throws weren't very good. So it was interesting that the Seahawks didn't come in, and they didn't have this, outside of Devon Witherspoon, they don't have this ferocious pass rush, but Kyler was just not seeing the football field very well. And there were some throws on the run for someone as athletic as Kyler Murray with the level of arm talent that he has that he's got to make. All right, I'm not going to take a break, but I'm just going to hop over to the AFC side and remind you, this is all 32, the weekly show that I'm going to try to hold every single week, Tuesday or Wednesday. I give you a take, an advanced stat nugget, a thought, an opinion on all 32 teams in the NFL. And now I'm jumping over. I just finished the NFC. We're going to jump over to the AFC side now. We're right at about 30 minutes, which is perfect. Buffalo Bills. Talked about the run defense. It has not been very good. They have so many young pieces. They've been without Ed Oliver and Matt Milano the last 2 games, Ed Oliver the last 3 games. I think it'll get a little better when those players return. I want to talk about Deion Walker because he was such a fascinating guy the last 2 years on the draft radar. After 23, everyone's like, oh, this is the next Dexter Lawrence. Like, this is as close to Dexter Lawrence as we've seen. His pressure rate in 2023, at 20 years old, mind you, at Kentucky, was 12%. And you're like, whoa, anything over 10% at defensive tackle at the collegiate level is like, all right, that's like a first or a second round pick. His was 12. Last season, it dipped down like to around 8 or 9, dealt with some injuries, 6'7", 350, maybe some concerns about his conditioning. He has been, if you can't count Ed Oliver because he's played 1 game, he has been the Bills' probably second best defensive lineman after Joey Bosa through 4 games. He has 8 tackles on the season thus far. This is Deion Walker, by the way, if you're just joining. Rookie Deion Walker, 4th-round pick from Kentucky. He has 8 tackles through 4 games for the Bills. 5 of them have been stops, and those are tackles that constitute a loss for the opposing offense. So like on first down, I believe it's under 60% of the yards to gain, second down 40%, and then on 3rd and 4th down, stopping the play from getting that first down. He has 2 pressures. They have not played him very much. He's played right around like 20 snaps per game. And he's flashed absolutely as a pass rusher or just a backfield disruptor. Swim moves, very good with that. Swipe moves. There's just a lot of niftiness to his game, which is crazy to say at 6'7" and 350. All right, Miami Dolphins. I'm wondering. Now, they kind of got like an ugly win over the Jets. I don't know if it was just me, but it just felt like both of those teams struggled on that Monday Night Football doubleheader. The Dolphins were clearly the better team, and they won. I don't want to say running away, but they handled their business at home. I'm just wondering, post Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill was having a great game. After his injury, what are the Dolphins going to do at receiver? Now, you could say, hey, Mike McDaniel, he's walking on thin ice. He's supposed to be an offensive guru. We've seen, under his watch, Tua's led the league in passer rating. They scored 70 points in a game, all that. The receivers are Jalen Waddle, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who actually, I think, overachieved in the beginning of his career in Tennessee. Malik Washington, Taj Washington, two tiny slot receivers that I liked actually a fair amount coming out of Virginia and USC, respectively. Are they needle movers? Maybe they will be. Maybe they'll get the opportunity and prove to be really good players, but certainly unproven. Cedric Wilson, of the Dallas Cowboys of a few years ago, had a few good games here and there. They just don't have D. Eskridge as well. They don't have a lot of firepower at receiver, and I wonder how much, if at all, maybe not, but I just wonder how much that limits what Tua can do and what Mike McDaniel can do in terms of scheming up open receivers or just scheming up, just putting the fear in the opponent's eyes or in their heads, like, oh man, we got to cover all this speed. They still have a lot of speed, but I don't know. I mean, of course, you're not as nervous when you're not seeing Tyreek Hill on the field, and they don't have a ton of depth in terms of proven options at wide receiver. New York Jets. I do not want to pile on Aaron Glenn. He seems like a nice guy. He did a great job, I thought, with an injury-ravaged unit last season in Detroit. I think he knows the defensive side of the ball in the NFL as a former defensive back, and he worked his way up through the ranks and deserves the head coaching job. But through 4 games, the Jets are have the fourth or fifth most penalties in football. And I don't want to be one of those guys because I think penalties can just go away occasionally, but they just feel very disorganized to me. The week 1 right now is the aberration. From week 1 to week 4, so weeks 2, 3, and 4, let's say, they look the same. Very disorganized, very flat, a lot of penalties. You can call them dumb penalties, late hits on quarterbacks, flags in very inopportune times. They had 13 penalties against the Dolphins. So I think first and foremost, and I have a lot of questions on their new GM, Darren Moogie's like, oh, we're going to try Justin Fields at quarterback. Like, this just seems like if you're a first-year GM, I'd want to aim higher than Justin Fields after what we've seen from him in the NFL. And he's been exactly what we expected from Justin Fields thus far, by the way. Just very disorganized. I think that's what they have to fix first. They have to not take as many penalties. They have to line up correctly. They have to be better in clock management situations. And then I'm not going to say that suddenly they're going to start winning football games every week, but that to me is what, if I was a Jets fan, I'd be like, man, we seem kind of the same as what it's been the last 2 or 3 coaching regimes, where if they don't come out flat, they come out with a lot of energy, but they're too much energy and they're taking too many penalties. 13 against the Dolphins, just too much. I think that's what Aaron Glenn has to fix first. New England Patriots. I've been mostly impressed with Drake May. I think the flashes have been spectacular. They haven't been quite as consistent. He's taken a ton of sacks. I think that's a little bit of a concern. I'm just interested to see if Travion Henderson can become part of this offense at a higher level. We saw some flashes against what might be the worst team in the NFL in the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, the week before, Ramondre Stevenson had 2 fumbles. They turned over the football 5 times in that game. So much hype about Travion Henderson. And I want to be proven wrong because I liked him as a prospect, but I thought he was drafted far too high as like one of the first picks in round 2. But so much hype about him in the training camp and the preseason. I want to see him utilized as more of the bell cow to Ramondre Stevenson being the number 2 in New England. I think that's how they can get the most efficiency out of their backfield and using them on swing passes and in the screen game, not just between the tackles. Because I think the offensive line is a little better, but it's not a unit that's going to be just demolishing defensive fronts every week. So you have to find a way to get your running backs involved beyond the run game. All right, that was the AFC East for all 32. I'm going to jump now to the AFC North. I'm going to go north. East, north, south, west, like I did with the NFC side. AFC North. Baltimore Ravens. What is up with the Ravens defense? Now, any Ravens fan watching, say, hey, look, Nnamdi Madubuike, he's on IR. Kyle Van Noy's missed the last 2 weeks. I get that. Those are two really good players. I mean, Kyle Van Noy's into his mid-30s, but he's just that pesky edge rusher that can drop into coverage. He's decent against the run. He's big. He's physical. Okay, sure. Nnamdi Madubuike, great player. One of the best top 5 to 7 nose tackles in the NFL. But last season, the Baltimore Ravens, and I know they started slowly on defense last year, so maybe that's the ultimate caveat. But last season, the Baltimore Ravens had 3 all-pros on defense. Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, and Kyle Hamilton. Now, Roquan did get hurt against the Chiefs. But Kyle Hamilton's there. Marlon Humphrey's there. You got Nate Wiggins, who had a great rookie season. Into year 2, you got Odafe Oweh, who is now an established veteran. You drafted Mike Green in the second round when a lot of people thought he was a first-round talent, but maybe fell due to some character off-field issues. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens have the 5th worst EPA on defense. They're allowing the 5th most EPA per play to opposing offenses in non-garbage time situations. So the Baltimore Ravens defense, 5th worst on defense in EPA per play allowed in non-garbage time through 4 weeks. I don't know how that makes sense when, sure, okay, maybe Nnamdi Madubuike and Kyle Van Noy, they're back, but how much, I mean, are they making this an elite level unit that we saw from like week 6 through the playoffs last year? I just don't understand how you're a team that really brings back everyone. You run it back with essentially the entire team on that side of the ball, and you have like so much star power, and you're allowing 41 to the Bills and 37 to the Chiefs. You get kind of a layup against the Browns. You're 1-3. The defense, to me, is the most surprising because there are a lot of really good players, star players on that side of the football that are not playing up to snuff right now. Cleveland Browns, I'm going to highlight, instead of Dylan Gabriel, because I was not a big fan of him pre-draft, I do think he has to be better than Joe Flacco, who's actually thrown the ball well, but just cannot move in the pocket whatsoever. I want to highlight Isaiah Bond. Now, I know there's some bad off-field stuff, and I do not condone any of the bad off-field things that he was allegedly doing or did, whatever. I want to talk about just the football side. Isaiah Bond, a lot of people thought could have been a day 2 pick, probably at receiver, Alabama, and then Texas. 3 catches for 58 yards in his NFL debut, unless he played the week before and I just didn't see it. 3 catches for 58 yards, 2 of 2 in contested catch situations, and looked like the savvy, explosive route runner that we saw at Alabama and at Texas. So that's like, with Cedric Tillman getting injured, you know what you have in Jerry Jeudy. You're looking for just some kind of offensive spark to help out what is, I think, still a pretty damn good defense, to just not get this defense where they have to be perfect for you to win a game like they did in week 3 against the Green Bay Packers. Isaiah Bond could maybe be that guy as an undrafted free agent who fell to the undrafted ranks, maybe justifiably so because of what happened off the field with him. But on the field, looked like probably a 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick. Maybe he can be that savvy route running type opposite Jerry Jeudy and can get open and he's going to need to get open. They're facing the Vikings, and they're starting a rookie 3rd-round quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. He's got to have to see some wide receivers open. 3 catches for 58 yards, 2 of 2 in contested catch situations for Isaiah Bond in his NFL debut. So hats off to him. It was a very impressive performance with Joe Flacco throwing him the football. Cincinnati Bengals. Their bad blocking continues. Like, you guys all watched it when you watch Monday Night Football. There was a few times where like Orlando Brown and Amarius Mims looked like they were like late off the snap, or the ref should have blown the whistle. I went back and watched all those plays. They're like not on the same page with the center on a few of those, where Jake Browning, or if it was Joe Burrow, had no chance. And I know that that's kind of a point of contention among Bengals fans now. Like, oh, look at the offensive line. They've tried to invest in it. Like Dylan Fairchild and Amarius Mims, like these are early picks. They signed Orlando Brown, who had been he's that classic, like we know what we're going to get from him. He's a solid left tackle. He can play right tackle, whatever. They're just not blocking very well. I mean, Chase Brown is not getting much on the ground, and he is one of the more dynamic young running backs in football. You can make a case he's the most dynamic, maybe after like Jahmyr Gibbs, in terms of go check his combine workout. They just can't block. And after that first drive in week 4, they just could not keep Jake Browning from either taking a hit, being pressured, or being forced out of the pocket. And I don't care if you're Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, whoever you are, it's going to be tough when you're getting pressured 40 to 50% of the time at quarterback. Pittsburgh Steelers staying in the AFC North here. How about Kenny Gainwell? Like I talked about it earlier with someone about just getting an opportunity. He got his opportunity. This is a career change of pace, scat back, lightning bug, jitterbug, whatever you want to call him. 19 carries for 99 yards. Scored, I believe, 2 touchdowns in that game? And to me, just watching his performance on film, I was like, this is the epitome of like so many backups at all positions. And we probably see it the most frequently at running back. So many backups can just come in. If they actually were just given the volume of a starter in a game or just needed to because the starter was injured, they can produce. And Kenny Gainwell has actually been very good even before this 19 carry, 99-yard game for the Steelers. He's been good through 4 weeks on the outside as a receiver, just spelling Jaylen Warren, who's now injured. And I'm just wondering, is Caleb Johnson, did I miss that he's injured? I mean, maybe I did, because Caleb Johnson was a 3rd-round pick and looked like, yeah, he can kind of do what Najee Harris did, just be that power back in this offense. He's been non-existent. But Kenny Gainwell, hats off to that signing by Omar Khan, the GM in Pittsburgh. 19 carries, 99 yards for Kenny Gainwell in week 4. Hats off to him. AFC South, moving down there to that division here on All 32, the show on a weekly basis that I give you some takes, some stat nuggets, observations for all 32 teams in the NFL. Tennessee Titans, AFC South. Man, it was hard to find something to talk about with this team because I don't want to come on here and just totally bash clubs. They know they're not great. Cam Ward said we're ass. Like he came out and said it, and I like that ownership from him. He's like, we're not winning games. Our offense isn't doing it. He hasn't been horrific. He's not being protected very well. He probably has the worst wide receiver group in the NFL. And the defense is not very good. However, what I will talk about, Jeffrey Simmons, their interior defensive lineman, their lone star, I think, on the defensive side. L'Jarius Sneed has been a shell of his former self after leaving Kansas City. He's dealt with injuries too, which certainly needs to be factored in. Jeffrey Simmons, to me, is going to be the trade deadline candidate for everyone that needs defensive tackle help. He's going to be like the hottest name at the trade deadline. 17 quarterback pressures on 97 attempts. That's insane. That's like elite edge rusher type efficiency in terms of rushing the passer. You saw the sack where he sacked CJ Stroud in exactly 2 seconds, like the fastest sack that any defensive tackles had in the NFL in the next gen stat era. He's playing absolutely out of his mind, kind of as a lone wolf there in Tennessee on that defensive front. Houston Texans. I'm going to stay with another running back. Talked about Kenny Gainwell, another backup. Woody Marks, 119 yards from scrimmage without Joe Mixon there. Woody Marks was someone that he was not even really on my radar that much during the pre-draft process. I didn't love his film. I didn't love his analytics profile. Did not test particularly well. He's older. He's turning 25 this year, or he's already 24. Actually, I think, he turns 25 in December, if I am remembering correctly. 4 catches for 50 yards, had a touchdown, looked pretty dynamic as a runner. I'm going to insinuate that I don't think he has a long shelf life being the age that he already is. But Woody Marks, 119 yards from scrimmage, gave the Texans a little bit of a jolt from the backfield where they needed it, because the offensive line is not protecting particularly well. But even if they're not creating a lot of push in the run game, to have your back come out of that performance or out of that game with 120 yards from scrimmage, really, really impressive. And I think the offensive line is probably thanking him for, what he did in that 26-0 win over the Titans. Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to cruise through these because I want to keep the show right at about 1 hour every week. I think Jonathan Hines-Allen is now. Last week I said that I think Nate Herbig from the Steelers is actually the most underrated edge rusher in the NFL. So I got to think of how to say this. I think Josh Hines-Allen of the Jaguars is the most underrated elite level rusher in the NFL. Like, he is on that same level, maybe just below, like the Max Crosbys, the Myles Garretts, the Micah Parsons. And like, you hearing that, you're probably like, no way, he's nowhere close. Pressure rate of 16.7%. He is a 3-down player. He's played, he plays 6, 7, 800, 900 snaps a season. He does not come off the field very frequently. He can win with power. He can win with speed around the edge. He can win with counter moves. He can win with bull rush. He's been really, really good in Jacksonville. And he hasn't really gotten much help from former first overall pick Javon Walker, who was supposed to, like, by now, blossom into the player that Josh Hines-Allen has always been. Indianapolis Colts. Talk about pass rushers and erupting and upside and potential. Laiatu Latu had 9 pressures against the LA Rams. 9. And he is ascending. His pressure rate right now is 20.2% on 74 pass rush snaps. And each week he has raised the level of his total pressures that he's had in a game. It's funny that after 1 year, when you're in a draft class, that's kind of stacked at the top, and there's Laiatu Latu, there's Jared Verse, there's Dallas Turner. Oh, which one should we pick? The Colts take the first one off the board in 24 in Laiatu Latu. Jared Verse is the one that goes on to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And it's, Colts made the wrong decision. It's crazy that we do those things, because you got to give him at least 2 years, if not 3, to really be able to make that legitimate comparison. I think Jared Verse is unbelievable. There's all pros in his future. But Laiatu Latu's eruption is here. 9 pressures in that game. He's maybe trying to close the gap. And there's a sizable gap between he and Jared Verse, the seasons that they had as rookies. He also has that interception where he sunk into coverage early in the year. So Laiatu Latu, hats off to him, because he has been great for the Indianapolis Colts and this upstart Colts team that's 3-1. Last division for week 4 of all 32. I'm Chris Trapasso, by the way. Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to go AFC West. Kansas City Chiefs. Something is with, I don't know if it's Steve Spagnuolo, if it's their GM Brett Veach, if it's their director of college scouting. A few years ago, they trade L'Jarius Sneed. They roll out Josh Williams and Jalen Watson. These like day 2 and day 3 young corners. And you're like, they go on to win the Super Bowl. They play great in man coverage on the outside. They give Steve Spagnuolo that luxury of playing man so he can blitz. He's not concerned about it. Noel Williams is that next player through the first month of the season. 3rd round pick. He's been targeted 8 times, Noel Williams. He's allowed 2 catches for 10 yards. It was really fun in that Cal Bears secondary this past season. Noel Williams, 3rd round pick. Marcus Harris, I believe the Titans picked him. And there was another defensive back. They had like 3 NFL caliber defensive backs. Noel Williams, I was not quite as high on him. I thought he was picked a little bit early in round 3, but it seems to be a perfect scheme fit through this first month of the season, because he has played really good football in a lot of man-to-man situations for Steve Spagnuolo. So Noel Williams looks early on. It's a long season, and he's only a rookie. The hiccups could come, but if the first month of the season are any indication, Noel Williams seems like he fits like a glove with Steve Spagnuolo in this offense. Las Vegas Raiders. We got to talk about Ashton Jeanty, right? I mean, 138 yards, explosion from him. We all knew that it was coming. Just as the Raiders get used to the intricacies of Chip Kelly's blocking, what he asked from his blocking unit, it felt like Ashton Jeanty's eruption was going to come, and we saw that this past week against the Chicago Bears. He had that insane 64-yarder where he like ran through someone. Was good in the pass game as well. Caught a touchdown pass as well. So Ashton Jeanty, like, that's why when you see these numbers early in the season, or just for any stretch for a running back, that their yards after contact figure is actually higher than their total yards. They're making a lot of defenders miss. They'll eventually get a good blocking performance. And my thought was that there's so many pin, pull, climb to the second level responsibilities for the Raiders blocking unit. That's not like an elite level group. I figured it was going to take time for those blockers to get accustomed to what Chip Kelly's asking of them. We saw that against the Bears during Ashton Jeanty's 138 yards on the ground. LA Chargers. What was I going to mention here with the Chargers? Oh, Joe Alt going down with the ankle, I believe ankle injury. Like why can the Chargers never have a sturdy right side of the line? Like it's insane what Justin Herbert has to deal with every year. We know about Rashawn Slater. We know how great he is when he's on the field. 2 now season-ending injuries very early in a season for him in his early NFL career. Glad he got that contract. But Joe Alt goes down, and Joe Alt has just been erasing people at the left tackle position. Now there's both edges are, it's Storm Norton, it's Trey Pipkins, or I don't know if Storm Norton's still there, but I know Trey Pipkins is still there. 45.5% pressure rate for Justin Herbert against the Giants. And it's a good group. I mean, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau is kind of your rotational edge. Brian Burns, like it's a really good defensive front that they just faced. But I'm concerned over however long Joe Alt is out. If the Chargers can maintain the level of efficiency that we saw through the first week or so, or first 2 or 3 weeks through the air with the play action game, running the football. I mean, Omarion Hampton has the long run. That helps. But it's really, to me, even though it's Jim Harbaugh coaching this team and Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator, it is the modern day NFL. And you make your money, you get your wins or you suffer the losses, how well you pass the football, how efficiently you do it, and how efficiently you stop the pass. And Justin Herbert cannot, for as miraculous of an athlete or spectacular of an athlete as he is, and the miraculous throws that he can make, they cannot sustain this 3-1 start and the efficiency that we saw in 860 yards, leading the NFL in terms of passing yards through the first 3 weeks, if Justin Herbert is getting pressured 45 to 50% of the time. So I have concerns about that. And last but not least, we are going to get in under 1 hour today. The Denver Broncos had their first running back in the Sean Payton era go for over 100 yards. J.K. Dobbins. Couldn't have happened to a more resilient player. And he did it at 6.3 yards per carry. I mean, we know back-to-back knee ligament tears. Then he comes back, looks good, Achilles tear. And it's like, is this the end for him? Like, is he going to have any juice left? Plays great last season in LA with the Chargers. Week 12, MCL sprain, injury reserve, done for the year. Through the first month of the season, he's really staved off RJ Harvey, who finally got some more carries, and I think he will get more carries, the rookie from UCF. But J.K. Dobbins has really staved him off as the true feature back. And his cutting skill, his contact balance, and his vision after all of those lower body injuries in the NFL and the mileage that he put on at Ohio State, absolutely miraculous. You could tell that they were trying to get that 100-plus yard ball carrier for the first time in the Sean Payton era in that win over the Cincinnati Bengals. First time in 38 games. J.K. Dobbins, 6.3 yards per carry in that game. I believe he's third in the NFL in rushing behind Jonathan Taylor and James Cook. He's having a great start to the season. And the Broncos, we always talk about their defense. I think the defense has been pretty good, maybe not quite to the level that they were last season when it was like the NFL's best unit. The offensive line is really good. Garrett Bowles, Quinn Miners kind of lead that group, and they were creating some pretty big holes against the Cincinnati Bengals defensive front in that Week 4 win. All right, we are under an hour. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Chris Trapasso. This was All 32. Tune in next week. I will tweet out the link. I'll put it on as many social media platforms as I can. I'm going to just analyze all 32 teams, give you a nugget, an opinion, a thought on all 32 teams. So, again, I'm Chris Trapasso. This was All 32. Thank you for watching.